Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome back to this week's episode of Podiatry Marketing. With me, as usual, every week is my partner in crime, Big Jim Mack. How you doing today, Jim?
I'm good. We're only like 2 days out from Christmas. I got some last minute shopping I got to get in before Santa Claus comes to town. So yeah, things are good here.
It's gone fast. This whole year has just absolutely flown past, and yeah, my Christmas shopping's done. I think I haven't done it with. It was 2 days out. Anything that I've forgotten or anyone I've forgotten, bad luck. You're not getting.
You're a better man than I.
Yeah, I hate going to the shops. I don't like going to the shops at the best time. This time of the year, to be avoided.
Absolutely. I'm with you there. I get claustrophobic with the amount of people and the parking is just it's a nightmare.
The big thing they have in Australia, it's not like leading up to Christmas, yes, really busy, but the day after Christmas is we have a public holiday called Boxing Day.
hmm
And all of a sudden it's Boxing Day sales. And it is mayhem. Like they have absolutely, it makes, your Cyber Monday and what's the other one happened in November?
Black Friday.
Yeah, Black Friday, Cyber Monday makes them look like nothing. Boxing Day specials are just incredibly nutty. And then you've got other people who are bringing back things that didn't fit at Christmas time, and it's just, craziness. So anyway, hope you have a great Christmas, Jim.
Yeah, you too, Tyson.
And anyone that's listening to this, if you're listening to this before Christmas, I hope you have a great Christmas. If you're listening to this after Christmas, I hope you had a great Christmas. And if you're listening to this a year later, we had an awesome Christmas. So just let you know.
Absolutely.
Okay, what are you talking about today?
Yeah, so in the past we've talked a lot about Google search ads, even we discussed a little bit about Facebook and display ads, but there's a newer form of Google advertising that's available for podiatrists, at least in the States. I'm not sure if it's available yet in the UK or Australia, but these are what's called local service ads. So the short term form is LSAs. And we'll talk a little bit about today kind of what these LSAs
Yeah.
are, when to use them, when not to use them, and just kind of like jump into all things podiatry, patient recruitment or kind of finding patients through these local service ads.
Okay, so explain what an LSA is.
Yeah, so this is something that's completely separate from Google search ads. So there, you basically have to go through a certification process. But not only do you have to send them like your medical degree, but also like your business, paperwork. It can be a long, drawn out process where basically, you're kind of bidding for leads as opposed to just kind of showing up for a search term. So, if someone is looking for podiatrist, like there's a certain section of Google now that will show these local service ads. And it has to be kind of a qualified person in order to show up here that's gone through this Google verification process. But there's certain keywords that will trigger these LSAs, but it's a different section within that kind of Google search area.
Okay, so are you saying, so a podiatrist, they've got to prove to Google that they are a podiatrist. So it's
Right.
to stop just some corporate company stuffing keywords just to try and pretend they're a podiatrist to try and steal patients. They want the podiatrist to actually see the patients.
Right, exactly. A lot of times you'll see now, even with foot surgery or foot surgeons or certain things, like some of the medical equipment providers, like Lapiplasty or other. I'm not trying to pick on them, but other medical devices will try to send people to their directory of maybe like
Yeah.
preferred providers, right? So what this is trying to do is a little bit eliminate some of that. And also, instead of paying per click, you're actually paying Google, depending on the local area you're in, you're paying them, a little bit more for like a qualified lead. Like basically that person will call your clinic directly and make an appointment. And Google has some software on their end that can tell whether the patient, whether they made an appointment or not. So it's one of these things where like you get kind of a guaranteed patient, but there's some pros and cons to this model, and we'll get into those. But it's something that should lead a little bit more directly to someone booking in your clinic, which is kind of like, which kind of Google's kind of been trending this way for a while because they just rather you do this kind of stuff and then let them decide when to show up ads than, they're trying to make their search ads um, less intuitive or more of a black box for people. So they just really rather like you pay them for leads as opposed to kind of like doing search ads in the future. And it may transition that way where they get rid of search ads at some point in time. You never know.
Yeah, I have no idea whether this is available in Australia yet.
Yeah.
If anyone in Australia is listening to this, please let me know. But as soon as we finish doing this recording, I'll be diving on and having a look. Because it's one of those things sometimes that you may hear about, or it's just been mentioned in a different way. And because I don't need to use it myself, I haven't sort of dove into it. But I'm definitely going to check this out. And I think anyone listening to this, dive on and do more research on this.
And it's definitely something that got rolled out a little bit more quickly for like air conditioning, heating companies, plumbers, more kind of those service trades were the kind of first professions that were kind of brought into this local service advertising. But, the healthcare providers, dentists, podiatrists have been kind of brought in. Like I said, you really have to kind of go through a long process to set up a profile that details the type of care you want to provide. Do you do surgery? Do you not do surgery? What are your hours? What are your locations? And then, it takes sometimes it's some back and forth with Google, making sure that you have that license verification. There's a background check associated with it. They're reviewing this stuff. So it can take, I think some of the podiatrists I've worked with take 6 to 10 weeks to complete this verification. So it's not just like, you fill this thing out and tomorrow it's going to happen. But like I said, businesses are going to pay for these. They're only going to pay for these qualified leads, meaning that like, with Google search ads, you're going to pay for every click whether that person becomes a patient or not. But the thought behind the local service ads, you're only going to pay for these people that make an appointment with your practice.
Yeah, it's funny you say all that because it is one thing about Google I have noticed in a lot of the services they provide, even with YouTube, that like my YouTube channel's now at a point now where it's monetized and I get paid, which is great. But to get paid, I had to verify your bank account details, all this other information, business accounts, but then a physical address. And then I had to wait till they actually posted something to about 3 or 4 weeks before something arrived in my letterbox that I could type in a code. And once I did that, it was like, finally, then they can actually pay me. And then I had to jump through some other hoops. So I do like it that they go to that extent to make sure you really are who you are. Because I remember back in the day when Yellow Pages was around, that you could go, you could be a podiatrist, be in a podiatry clinic, and I would put ads in the physiotherapist section, just saying I want to put an ad in there about heel pain, and I would advertise in the physio thing, and they wouldn't stop me doing it as long as I paid. They didn't care.
Right.
Technically, I shouldn't have been there. So just let people know that actually worked in the day.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and that's no different to what you're saying the medical companies are doing by putting their own ads in our space.
Yeah, exactly. It could be a medical equipment provider. Like I said, it could be like kind of sending you to a place that you didn't necessarily want to be. So, inside these local service ads as well, there's a Google guarantee like thing that also kind of like builds trust with people.
Is that little blue badge that you normally see in other places?
Yeah, there'll be a little badge and then it just says Google guaranteed on it. So, when you click on it, I think it'll kind of outline the process that the podiatrist or the clinic had to go through in order to be in that position in the ad. So, the fact that you have this like special badge is kind of a visual cue to people that it's much more trustworthy than even the search ads themselves. So it's something that differentiates those local service ads from the search ads.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look around a few websites, see if I can actually find the little badge. So what are the pros of using local service ads?
Yeah, so like we talked about, it's going to increase your visibility. It's like one more place on a Google search page for your business to show up, and you do have that kind of badge of trust since it's Google guaranteed. They've since you've filled out a ton of paperwork, they know you're a real business and you're a real provider. That can sometimes lead to people to click on it more than they would on just a general search ad. It's going to be the very top of the results. It's going to be above traditional PPC ads, even above the organic ads in the map. So, it's going to really increase that local reach. You're going to get more of those, surface area on that landing page or on that search results page to make sure that you're showing up there. And also the thought behind the pay per lead model too is it's, you would think that it'd be kind of like, you're only paying for these verified leads. It's not just random clicks. You should have more control over your ad spend if it is this pay per lead model. So that's something to consider. It should be more cost effective than just the pay per click, because maybe someone just accidentally clicked on your ad that didn't mean to go on it. Those things happen. So those are the kind of the first two pros, I'd say.
Yeah, and I have done that myself where I'm looking for something and something pops up, and just because they've got the right wording, I've clicked on it, all of a sudden gone, oh, that was an ad.
Right.
But it was a pay-per-click ad. And as soon as it's opened, I know I'm in the wrong spot and I've got straight back out of it. But they would have been charged for that.
No, absolutely. The third area I would say as well is that, it's a real trust factor to see that Google badge. It's
Oh,
gonna,
definitely.
when you're searching for things, I think I kind of go in with a skeptical eye a lot of times when I'm looking for things online, like we talked about in a previous podcast, when if I'm looking for a new microphone, or if I'm looking for something like, what is the bias? Where are the biases here? What is it shady? Like if it's something is $200 less expensive than the next place, like why is that happening? Are they trying to rip me off the shipping? You kind of have to like earn the trust by spending a lot of time online. But if you see, Google guaranteed badge, it's kind of almost a shortcut to, well, Google's done this due diligence on this podiatrist and company, then maybe, I don't have to spend all that time as much. So
Mm.
since you do go through that verification process, it is targeted to local patients. This is something that shows up in a local area. You decide where it shows up. And I think there's only a certain radius around your clinic you're able to show up. So, you can't be, it's going to be a locally relevant ad these patients will see, or
And that's
prospective
part of
patients
the
will see.
verification process as well, which
Right,
is
exactly.
why
Yeah.
they want to know proof of you, your address, your business, all that information. So they say, great, well, these local ads are just going to go to this area. Outside of there, that's for another group of people.
No, exactly. It's because you'll find people trying to game it, right? Maybe someone's,
Oh,
50 miles away, but they know that like all the high paying patients are located in this zip code or something. They can do ads there, but it may not be, actually may not be really good for the advertiser, the clinic advertising as well, but they're trying to like get onto those good paying patients or something. But this has a little bit more control as far as a proximity effect.
okay. For every pro, there's got to be a con.
Or a few cons.
Or there's a few cons. Okay. I'm interested in the cons. Not that I like the negative side of things, but when something sounds really great, like you just described, you sort of go, oh, come on. There's got to be
Yeah.
something.
So
Something we're going to watch out for.
we're gonna ramp up here. We're gonna start with the kind of like the smaller cons and work at the big ones for
Oh, okay.
to kind of work it that way. But there can be it's not happening yet, but in the future this will be a high competition area, which is probably gonna make these leads become more expensive over time. And whether that's going to return, you can get that return on an investment there. It's going to be tricky. And you really have to kind of make sure you're analyzing the type of leads that are coming in and making sure, was that was it for shockwave, or, does it make sense to, maybe for orthotics, it makes sense to try to get those patients in the door, but not for other types of care. So you really have to be aware of that, high competition comes potentially high prices for these local service ads when you're trying to get leads. Also, you have very limited kind of control over the ad copy. You kind of give it the information where you're located, the business information about you provide in that kind of verification process. But beyond that, you don't get to write the copy of the ads themselves that are shown. So it's important to know that there's little control over the messaging. You will, like I said, you will put in the type of care you want to provide. So it may show up some of those terms, but you don't have kind of finite control. Google's been taking that away over the last few years.
Yeah, just on that competition, just go up one thing when you
Sure.
talked about the like high competition. So therefore, it's one of those things too. Like the early adopters are going to do better. People
Right.
who are listening to this now and go, oh, okay, I'm going to check out. Is this my area? Yes, it is. Getting in early before the masses get hold of it, you could actually do quite well from it.
Well, that's why you haven't heard this talked about in any other marketing podcasts or anyone else in the podiatry space right now, because people that are using it, they can get a lot of benefit from these local service ads. So it is something that is, I would say it's a big secret, but it's definitely something people don't want to let their competition know about it, because it can be a kind of a way to get more patients in the door for sure.
There you go. You heard it here first on the Podiatry Marketing Podcast. This is why you should tune in every week.
Yeah,
Find out what's
absolutely.
happening. Yeah. Don't be that person that misses an episode and go 2 years later, damn it, I should listen to that. That one particular episode could have changed my life. So what else? What's another con?
Also, like the lead quality can vary. If you're, I would say that it has to be a pretty narrow, determining what you don't want to put in services that you won't get an ROI from. So, if you know that you make a lot of money from orthotics or from Shockwave, just keep it to those things. Don't try to like spread the net too wide, because if you bring things in and you're paying, $50 to $100 per lead, and you're doing nail care or something where you don't get paid very well, it's just not worth it. So you want to make sure you kind of like keep it narrow as far as the services that when you're doing the onboarding, that you say you provide. So that's really, really important.
Is that the cost?
What's that?
How much is the cost to actually?
It's going to vary between, like, that's the thing about Google. It's a black box, right? Sometimes in an area that's hyper competitive, maybe it's a couple $100 per lead, but I've seen it with some of the smaller locations and some of it's still new, where it's in the $30 to $50 range, but it's going to really vary widely between the type of competition you have and the type of patients you want to bring in the door.
I suppose too, if you're bringing in the right patient, like you said, if you bring the right patient in for $50, well, people will spend thousands of dollars in other areas and not get the right patient.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So it's definitely worthwhile. Okay, what's next, or what's the next con?
Yeah, so the last one and the biggest one is the risk of cannibalization. So what do I mean by this?
Yeah, what do you mean by
we're
this?
not talking about humans eating other humans, but
I know.
It's unclear whether Google can determine that you have, and they don't do anything from on there, and that I'm aware of, to stop this from happening. But maybe through Google Analytics, they might be able to do this. But some people are going to, search your name or search for podiatrist, and maybe they're already a patient in your practice.
Yeah.
Once they click on this and make an appointment through their software, it's very likely you could be charged, $50 to $60 for one of your own patients trying to make an appointment to come back into your practice. I'm not totally sure if Google has all of the technology in line to be able to sift through and filter out those patients that are already your patients. So that's my biggest concern. And one of my friends, Don Pelto, mentioned this on one of his podcasts recently, is that, they're using these ads, but they're also writing down, when the person calls in, and then, Google will tell you, like the phone number that called to make that appointment. And so you can cross-reference these things to see if you're paying for your own patients or not. Because you definitely don't want to be doing that. It makes no sense to do that. So something to be really, really aware of. And it's something that, will kind of lead into, what type of strategy is good to use with these types of ads, because the risk of, kind of, paying for one of your own patients is not, that could potentially happen.
Yeah. And like you said earlier on about if you're getting the wrong patients coming in from this, you have someone who's just come in for routine foot care and they've clicked through that and you've been charged $50 or $60 for that spot and you're only charging them $100 for the visit they're booking in for you. What was the point when they could have just phoned your clinic?
No, absolutely. So you have to really assess that percentage of those LSA leads that are turning into truly new patients. So it's something you just don't want to like set these ads and let them run. You definitely have to have a strategy around how you're using them.
Okay, it makes sense. So when might it make sense for podiatrists to actually use this?
I would say it makes sense for podiatrists that are starting a new practice. Number one, right? You don't have a huge roster of returning patients. So if you're just trying to spread the net super wide, it's great for new practices. You can quickly build visibility in a competitive market. You're going to establish maybe that get those new patients in the door while you're waiting for kind of your organic efforts. Like we talked about previously, SEO and having a great website is fantastic, but sometimes a little bit of paid either search ads or in this case local service ads can be a way to bring more patients in more quickly.
Sorry, I was just writing something down.
No worries.
Something just popped into my head and I thought, I'll write that down. So there was new practices.
Yeah. So then the second one would be specialized services, right? So if you're targeting high margin or like a very specific niche, a service, that might be a great place to use it. For Shockwave or orthotics or something more your high dollar items, it can be a great way to bring patients in the door potentially.
Well, that makes sense too. Well, like you said, a new practice that got no patients. So every patient coming through is going to be a bonus. It was exactly what you need,
Yeah.
especially if you're getting the right ones. But if you've got an existing practice, all of a sudden you might have got a Swift machine and you're the only person in your area with it, or there might be a couple in the area and you want to stand out from everybody else, is promoting that high paying service is definitely worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what else? When's another good time to use it?
Yeah, the last time to potentially use if you're opening like a satellite practice or
Okay.
a practice further away, kind of cold. Maybe you have like 10 or 15% of your patients were from that area previously. I've heard some people talking about, oh, we know we had 20% of the patients in that local market, so we opened up there. That can be a great way to bring new patients in from that new expansion or that area where you have that satellite practice because there's maybe not a lot of kind of brand recognition, or they may not know who you are. Maybe a few patients do, but not everybody does. It can be a great way to get that visibility and patients in the door. Like we said previously, though, you really want to make sure that you're kind of tracking the costs of these local service ads, and you're really delivering kind of a positive return on investment. You're not getting, you're returning patients to the practice, which would probably happen as often in a satellite practice, but it's definitely something you want to be tracking and writing down.
Yeah. This whole idea of this is like, it sounds fantastic, but like I said, you get your pros, you get your cons. This is something you really need to be actively watching. It's not something you just set it and walk away from, but think, oh, well, that should be fine.
Yeah, I find this a lot of people that, they think like with when you're doing kind of any kind of advertising or especially in the case of these local service ads, well, I just give Google my money and they'll send me patients and I just kind of like that's just the way it works. But you have to have a very clear strategy going into what are you trying to achieve with this, right? If you're just
Mm,
give Google your money, you're not really sure what they're going to give you in return. So, having some analytics to back things up, to know exactly, especially these local service ads, who's calling in, were they a returning patient? Are they a new patient? Just seeing what the ROI is. Because if, like I said, there's certain scenarios where these things can be very powerful. People just into practice, the new practice, those kind of things can, whether, starting a satellite practice, you have some high dollar initiatives and procedures you want to do in your practice. Those can be great, but
mm.
you have to use those very, precisely. Otherwise, you might be spending your ad budget or marketing budget in ways that actually aren't helping move your practice forward.
So if you went back a couple of thousand years and you were Julius Caesar, would you be giving this a thumbs up or a thumbs down on what's your overall summary or thoughts? What's your overall opinion on this particular service?
Yeah, I think it's a great service, honestly, for the right clinic. Like
Yep.
those three scenarios I said. I think for everybody else, if you have, an established practice, maybe if you see other people are using it, maybe it's something to try. But make sure you're really writing down whether you're paying for your kind of previous clientele, right? I think that's the biggest potential like issue here that people will run into that are already, maybe they have a single location, they've been in practice for 10, 15 years. Just, use these things to, you can test them. If you work with someone in marketing, have them test them and see how they're doing. But you definitely don't want to just set it and forget it because that's a recipe for disaster when it comes to these LSAs.
Yeah, I could see this working really, really well for a new practice that has a specialized service that's moving into an area where there's already a lot of big competitors that think they already own the market and
Yeah.
can't be touched. You coming in and doing this as a new practice with a high paying service, well, I think that could actually work really well.
And I think this is the way that Google really wants like podiatrist ads to be honest. Like, I don't know if they'll ever get rid of the real, like, Google search ads or not. It's unclear to me, but they just prefer just to, like, you pay them money for, like, a specific thing.
Mm.
They don't want you to have any kind of finite control about search terms or, keywords.
Yeah,
I
or
think
being too generic where
right,
you just doing all these keywords to try and cover all the bases. I think they'd rather know that, hey, you specialize in toenail surgery. Hey, I work uh, really well with orthotics.
right.
So I want that. You want the toenail surgery. And Google says, okay, I want to make sure this goes to the right clinic who is actually requesting that.
Yeah, and I can see where I don't think they'll ever phase out the search ads because there is some, interesting things you can do there, but definitely it kind of feels like it's moving to this more, black box or competitive market for leads as opposed to click. So we'll see what happens.
It sounds like they want podiatrists or professions in general to think about niching a little bit.
Yeah, that definitely, I think it's something that, they want to make sure, I think it kind of lends itself to what Google wants in the first place for the most part. They want to make sure that when people search for a very specific thing, that they get the answer that makes them happy. So they keep using the service. It's like it's a kind of a loop that just keeps people wanting to go back to Google. If you, search, if you have a bad experience, either through a search ad or through an organic result, like maybe you're going to consider at some point in time, searching on Search GPT or a new search engine, something in the future. So they're trying to find ways to make the people that search for the information happy with the results they get. And maybe this is one way that they think they can do that.
And keep them coming back. Okay, Big Jim, that has been really interesting. And like I said, anyone who's this is the first time you've heard of it, do as I'm going to do, dive in and do a little bit more research, see if it's available in your area. So thanks very much for that, Jim.
No problem. Thanks for the conversation, Tyson, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep, talk to you next week. Okay, bye. I'll talk to you probably in the new year. Be very close.
Yeah,
okay.
Very close.
Okay, bye.
Bye now.